Let's start with a story about forgiveness that I think we all know. A stranger is welcomed to a Bible class in a church basement, and within minutes has shot and killed 3 clergy and 6 members of the congregation. A jury sentences the 22-year-old shooter to death, but the families of his victims and their friends in the church had not asked for vengeance. They forgave him, one of them saying, "We have no room for hate. Jesus says we have to forgive." So, looking at what it says in that Bible they were studying, we see that the legal system came in on the side of an eye for an eye, very Old Testament. And the survivors went with the change directive of the New Testament, a much more difficult path. There's a story of the parents who survived a horrendous car crash that left their 2 blonde girls dead. They forgave the drunk driver who roared through a stoplight and plowed into them. They say it's because Jesus commands that they forgive the drunk. People call these things astonishing and humbling. People who themselves were raised in spiritual traditions that teach forgiveness. Astonishing because it's still so rare, despite centuries of teachings. Is it hard because it's instinctive to want to hurt people who hurt us? I've long thought that the New Testament hasn't quite made it under Christian skins. That vengeful God of the Old Testament really seems closer to how most hurt people feel about the world. It's hard to forgive. And the cheek turning thing, that's even harder. I see people saying that only the strong can forgive. And I wonder, how do you get to be that strong? I don't think a command would get me there. But then I have a hard time obeying orders, no matter who they come from. And I'm a bit of a smartass. So Oscar Wilde's cynicism makes me laugh. And the devil in me enjoys reading about tiny revenge victories like this one. But that's the small stuff, and of course, silly. The question is, how can we be forgiving when it's not small at all and deadly serious? One of the most successful forgivers I've ever known told me how he got there. An investment banker born in Kenya, he was raised an Ismaili Muslim and as an adult became a Sufi. His name is Azim Kamisa, and he's the guy on the left in this photo. The man on the right is Ples Felix, a former Green Beret who was a San Diego County manager until his recent retirement. Both have been commended as giraffe heroes, and you'll see why. Their story began on a warm San Diego evening when Ples's grandson, Tony, a 14-year-old, shot Azim's son, Tariq. Tariq was delivering pizzas, not knowing it was part of a gang initiation for Tony, who was told to get the pizzas and not pay for them. When Tony didn't pay, Tariq took them back to his car, and Tony killed him. Tony was the first child in California to be sentenced as an adult under a new state law. He was sent to Folsom Prison at 14. Azim, deep in his own grieving, realized that both families had lost a son. He reached out and told Ples how sorry he was that he'd lost his grandson to prison. And Ples went to a Camisa family gathering to tell them how sorry he was that his grandson had killed Tariq. Can you imagine how much courage that took? The two men then teamed up, going into schools together to talk to kids about forgiveness. They've talked to thousands now, getting the kids to move past their astonishment at seeing the two of them together, getting them to make pledges to be peaceful themselves and not seek revenge. Such a powerful story. And there's more. Azim found out that there was no schooling in prison for Tony. So he began sending him books and writing him letters of encouragement. Then he went with Ples to visit Tony and saw in that youngster a fellow human being who needed a whole lot of help to deal with what he'd done and to reset his course in life. With this, the boy had 2 caring adult men to help him do that. He even had the promise of work. Azim talked to him about working at the foundation named for the boy he killed. When Tony got out of prison, he could go with his grandfather and Azim into schools to talk to kids about turning away from violence. 25 years on, that's coming to pass. After letters to the parole board from Azim and from the judge who once sentenced him, Tony's been released and is back in San Diego. He's in a program to learn a trade, and the Tariq Khamisa Foundation has sent him into schools with his grandfather and Azim, adding to the power of their message of forgiveness. Clearly, this is a hell of a fine example of forgiveness being worlds better than revenge. Think of all the families that have demanded closure from the courts, insisting that violent offenders be punished to the max. I wonder if getting that closure lightened the weight of their grief. I wonder if they felt renewed. Azim can tell you that despite his sorrow, he walks with a light step. He's at peace. Still, I wanted to know how he did it because I wasn't sure I could have. He didn't cite any holy writings. He wasn't obeying any commands. He meditates. So does Ples, his Baptist brother in arms in their campaign for forgiveness. Meditation, that made it personal for me because I've actually experienced that working, making forgiveness not only possible, but natural. Almost 50 years ago, my life took a nosedive I wasn't sure I could pull out of. I was taking care of a newborn, alone, my then husband having disappeared when I went into labor. My best friend, the newborn's godmother, was also missing. Cliché of cliches. They were in a nearby town together. I had lost my marriage, my best friend, and since the ex and I were business partners, I'd also lost my work and would soon lose my house and car. Not good. In the midst of all this, best friend called from a street corner payphone to assure me that this guy who is now hers would always take care of us. I'd been meditating for a couple of years at that point. You remember TM? Without a moment's hesitation, I felt her situation, her fear and pain, and told her to run for her life. He not only wouldn't take care of us, he was going to betray her just as he had me. I felt no need to make her suffer for what she'd done. I wanted to save her from the suffering her naivete was going to bring her. Meditation allowed Azim to be present to Tony and to every moment of the decades he himself has lived without his son. Meditation allowed me to be present to a friend who was in danger, rather than being stuck in my own grievances and fears. Moving on through the practical challenge of those difficult days for me, I saw my next best moves clearly and took them with a light, even joyous step. Dealing with my friend, forgiveness was instantaneous. The ex, not so much. I had to write a whole novel to process that. These days, I totally understand women who say they're being triggered by the liar-in-chief in the White House. What it all means to me is that commandments may get people to do the right thing out of obedience, but to really feel it, to truly forgive, it takes something that goes way deeper, that rises up from inside. Meditation can change us from the inside out, sanding away that eye for an eye demand for closure and leaving us open, empathetic beings who know that we're all in this together and that we need to help each other through. That's a bigger view than the one that says you should forgive because not doing it spoils your life. So many observers have counseled that we should forgive others for our own good, never mind what it may or may not do for the people we forgive. It's the old forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. I object. Look at the transactional nature of that equation. I'm going to forgive people, so I'll be forgiven. I'll do unto others as I would have them do unto me. No, I'm going to do better than that, and I think we all should. In forgiveness and in all things, the golden rule isn't good enough. So I propose a platinum rule. Without any expectation of payback, we have to forgive the people who hurt us. We have to do good unto them because we are each other's keepers, and the world works better for all of us if we're not living out revenge plots. A last thought on people who do this forgiving thing well. Mandela. 27 years of breaking rocks in the blazing sun of Robben Island, the dust of them ground into his eyes by the incessant wind. Shouting white Afrikaner guards kept the prisoners going. Mandela saw that the rocks were never used. They just stayed where he and his fellow prisoners shattered them. The work was torture for torture's sake. He knew that. 27 years of imprisonment and torture. And he emerged to lead Black South Africans into forgiveness for all that had been done to them. It was practical. It helped the nation move on from apartheid, renewing itself. And it was radiant. The man emitted a light that was visible to all. He was here in Seattle some years ago, and his presence blew me away. Let me read you what really got to me. In his 8th decade, he stands here free, emerged from the cage years, from the unintended monastery, where reckless fire became the molten gold radiating now in his gaze, his voice, in the hand that holds grasas as he turns to leave the room, still guarded by blonde Afrikaners, surrounding him, glaring menace at the eager crowd, pressing against us to clear his way to wherever he wishes to be. A searing flash from a contraband camera, and the white phalanx springs closer to him, arms raised, to protect. No flash, no flash, they shout. It hurts his eyes. They are gone. Mandela, his love, his white guards, and any certainty we may have had that time brings only loss. Mandela forgave his captors and led a nation to forgive as he had. Azim forgave his son's killer, and thousands of kids have learned that revenge is not the answer, possibly saving their lives and others. I hope these people who forgive because they're obeying commands are well and moving on with renewed, enlightened hearts, though I somehow doubt that they are. I hope you're a forgiver, so you can move through your life unburdened by the awful weight of needing the closure of retribution. My recommendation, make it easier on yourself. Meditate. I'd love to know your thoughts on all this, so I hope I see you in the chat room after the service.